So I recently wrote a article for my Substack. It's not out yet. It will be out in a couple of weeks. But I spoke about the importance of not just building a brand, right? Because in this particular moment in time, everyone can build a brand. But the difference between everyone and you is that you need to build your world. And when you learn to build your world and your ecosystem rather than just a one off brand, that is what allows it to become more revenue generating and allows you to provide a lot more opportunity off of the back of building your brand. So, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the most important thing that you need to consider when building your brand. And that is the idea of being able to systemize your experiences, right? And if you do not know who I am, my name is P.H.A.S.E. I am a brand authority strategist and I am an accredited PR practitioner. I've been in the industry for a decade now, and I work with fractional CFOs and independent finance leaders to build a level of brand authority, which is your personal brand multiplied by your business brand, multiplied by your campaign brand. When all those three brands align, that gives you a level of brand authority that makes you more visible and credible to a desired target audience. And then that will drive more leads into your business, more clients, and ultimately more revenue. So if you are interested in all things branding, marketing, and PR, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And also click below and check out my Substack in the description box as I post content on there weekly. And if you are interested in having a read of my article regarding how to build not just a brand, but a world and an ecosystem, then click on the description box and click in the link. And I think you'll enjoy that read very much. But I'm also going to cover it in this video as well, just for context, because that is what inspired me to talk about this topic today. And with me, I wanted to start with the idea that, you know, when it comes down to any sort of industry, right, there's going to be a moment in time where everyone seems to be doing the same thing, right? There, you can argue that there's so many different business coaches doing the same thing, or there's so many different personal branding strategists or brand strategists in general that are doing more or less the same thing, or different sort of PR companies doing the same thing. And I've done a video where I listed the top 10 sort of things that you need to consider in order for you to build a seven figure plus brand, right? And one of them was obviously your product. And with your product, you need to be in a industry. You need to not be in a position where you're reinventing the wheel. You need to be in a sort of industry where you are very much aware that it is a business model that works. People are paying for those services, and the people who are working on those things are delivering certain deliverables that allow them to get a particular outcome. When you position yourself like that, and then you understand that within your industry it is actually a profitable industry, that is only sort of one piece of the puzzle, right? So cool, you have your sort of product in mind. And a product for me could very well be in the idea or the range of PR, branding, or marketing. Any of those three, I will be listed amongst someone who does PR work, or does branding work, or does marketing work. One of those three. So with that, you could argue that is very much me in the same pool of everyone else, right? Or the same sea, considering that those industries are quite big. But then one thing that you need to start to consider when it comes down to your product, right, is your methodology, your framework, your systems. How do you go about allowing people to understand who you are in a way where they don't compare you or compete with other people in your field, right? And even if they do compare you, then they will then see your uniqueness in the aspects of your methodology. And like I said, more often than not, right, with a product, you offer a similar product, right? And you just offer it through a different offer. But then through that offer, that is where your methodology should live. And that's where your systems and your frameworks should live. And that is very much the reason why I developed the Phases brand authority system very much early in the journey, because I wanted to ensure that through the whole process of what I've been talking about, what I've been incorporating, what I've been doing for myself, what I've been doing with clients, all aligns with the system that I live by and that I ultimately go by all the time, right? I was gonna say live and unalive by, but you know, I digress. But that is something that I am passionate about because it aligns with all the reasons as to why I believe those are the aspects of your branding that you need to consider. And I suppose that a lot of people, they may know how to develop that level of visibility, but they don't know how to convert that attention into leads, right? Which will turn into clients and then revenue. There was a missing gap in there, which I felt the Phases brand authority system slots in nicely, because not only am I looking to build brands, right, but build brands that can actually generate revenue. And that's what it's there for. I do not believe in vanity metrics. If you've heard me mention it on this channel, I don't believe in vanity metrics. I believe building revenue generating brands in a way for you to convert that attention, right? And turn that attention into leads and leads into clients and clients into revenue. And with that idea of things, I have differentiated myself in the idea of building the Phases brand authority system. Phases is my intellectual property and is trademarked by myself. I own that methodology and that system and that framework. And that is why I'm talking about it all the time. And in fairness, I need to be promoting it a lot more in the upcoming months as well, just to reinforce the importance that it is my intellectual property. So I would say that if you are looking to establish yourself within your industry, I would say it's in your best interest to develop your framework or your own methodology or your own system that you can go by. And I would say even better, if you're in a process where you can trademark it and establish it as your own intellectual property, that will be the most impactful thing that you can do. Because as far as my agency is concerned, in terms of the phases as a methodology, as a way of living, as a lifestyle, with my background in PR and marketing, I've seen plenty of various different marketing experts and geniuses come through with their own sort of philosophies and their frameworks of how they go about developing different pieces of content in the marketing side of things, or PR. So that's what really inspired me to look into myself, to think that, you know what, if they can do it, why can't I develop my own system and frameworks of how I go about working with clients, or how I go about building brands? And that's where the idea of phases came through, right? And then that's where I added additional layers to it to really provide that whole ecosystem of how you are able to develop a revenue generating brand, right? And as you know, with the Phases brand authority system, is broken down through the Phoebe authority method, right? Looking at your personal brand, your business brand, and your campaign brand. And then we got the Phases framework, looking at your positioning, your hook, the amplification, strategic partnerships, engagement, sustainability. And then lastly, the authority flywheel, which is probably the most important part of the flywheel, learning how to establish your core platform, learning how to develop the synergy across those platforms for you to be able to build and develop, and then focusing how you're able to amplify your content through other various channels that align with the way that you are looking to turn that attention into leads, right? And then following that is in the PR. What are you doing for that third party credibility aspect? And then the marketing, how you then marketing and funneling those people who then trust you and they like you and they want to work with you. How are you able to funnel them effectively into your ecosystem that will then lead into opportunity where they can speak with you? And then lastly, the revenue. Then from the process of you being able to do that, you are then getting the revenue, and then you're reinvesting back into the process of developing more content and branding strategies and more PR efforts and more marketing that will continue the flywheel for you to continue to build and develop your ecosystem and to grow and to develop. I developed that in mind because I understood that in most aspects, a lot of people, they were looking for PR. And yes, they'll be more visible in the process, but they're not being in a position where they are then converting that attention into leads. A lot of agencies are in a process where they'll hit the KPI based on the amount of opportunity secured, but they wouldn't tell you how that opportunity has actually translated into sales or translated into revenue. And that's why I realized that the aspects of PR, marketing, and sales is somewhat very much interlocked and intertwined. And it's important that we focus on all of those in order to really guarantee those results. So, with that, I would really encourage you to really think about your world as you know it in terms of what you are building as your methodology and your system, because you don't want to be in a position where you are up against various other people, because ultimately you will. The bigger you get, the more that you'll be up against various different freelancers, organizations, whoever it may be. The difference is, as you want to establish yourself as a key person of influence and the obvious choice by having a proven methodology that you abide by and you live by and you've been working on relentlessly, as opposed to having a sort of buffet of all you can eat of all various different services and offerings. When you get to that process there, you are not in a position where you are deemed as more reputable, because you don't have a system, you don't have a framework or a methodology. It's more of a thing where you just kind of go with the flow of things. When in actual fact, you want to build a business, right? And you want to build a business that relies on the idea of systems and how you incorporate those systems to work. And that's why with the Phases brand authority system, I treated it as something that I can install into businesses based on the things that I've spoken to you about and how you can incorporate that into your business in order to build that level of visibility and credibility. So with that, I would really, really advise to really look into the idea of that. And really and truly, it needs to be something that makes sense for you as well. That's what I would say. It needs to make sense for you. It's for me, I feel like it was a sign from God how I managed to get with the name Phases and realize that it wasn't even trademarked, which I felt was a sign, firstly, but I thought it was bizarre in the grand scheme of things. So I thought it was in my best interest to really highlight that as my own intellectual property and to lead with that. But then not only do you stand out from your competitors and your peers when it comes down to having a proven methodology and a framework of how you go about certain things, but then the more that you start to do certain things that you do on a day to day, your experiences within your brand and your business and your campaign brand and all those things, you then get to a point where you start doing certain things repeatedly. And when you start doing these things repeatedly, those things should have a name. Those things should have a process and a way that you establish it as a particular thing, right? And even for myself, I have various different strategies and techniques that I incorporate on a day to day. And then I realized at one stage that I was ultimately doing these things in a process, but I just didn't give it a name. And then that's when I developed a methodology map where I incorporated all various different ideas of what I've been doing on a day to day and given it a actual title, given it a actual sort of system that I can incorporate within the whole aspect of the overarching element of what Phases is as a methodology and a framework. And the more that you then focus on the systemizing part of the business, the more that it just makes the most sense of you being able to incorporate it through all of the work that you do. And it only just makes you seem a lot more competent in your approach because you're very much detailed and aligned with the process of systems. And in this game of business, systems is the thing that keeps everything moving in the way that it needs to move without any sort of issues coming up, right? And ultimately, I would also say, lastly, before I end this video, is that when it comes down to the idea of you being able to develop your own methodology or your system, once you are able to then develop that as intellectual property and you own that trademark, there's so many various things that you can do that can build it to a new sort of circumstance or a new level in your business and your career. Because you have then established it as your intellectual property, you can commercialize it into something bigger than yourself, bigger than your agency, bigger than your brand, because you have spent the time to really focus on letting that become a thing of its own entity, right? And with me, that's exactly what I'm doing in the process of Phases as a way of living, as a way of working, as a way of doing things. It's going to become a actual system and a methodology that is well renowned within the aspects of marketing, branding, and PR because it lines up with exactly what makes the most sense in this particular moment in time, in this climate, right? Especially in this era of AI. So I say all that to say that once you get to that, you can do so much with the idea of having your own intellectual property, right? And for me, if you got this far, I want to be in a position where Phases is an accredited system, an accredited way of people to learn from it. And they get points, CBD points, literally, off the back of them learning it from an educational standpoint. And then they understand how to incorporate those elements of the Phases brand authority system within not only their brand, but also for their business. And then through that, it just becomes a thing that I mentioned is well renowned and globally recognized as a qualified, accredited thing that lives and breathes on its own because it works. So that's why I would say do that with that if you have a idea in mind that you want to establish as your own sort of intellectual property, but also something that you live by and abide by, like I said. Because honestly speaking, when it comes down to the idea of branding, you want to stand out. Of course, you want to stand out, but you want to stand out in a way that makes the most sense. And the more that you learn to systemize your experiences and then turn those into methodologies and turn those methodologies into intellectual property that you can build and grow, you will never look at that differently again. You will then understand the importance of why you need to do this, not only to help yourself stand out, but to allow yourself the stuff necessary for you to grow and scale and be looked at as a obvious choice when it comes down to people making those decisions whether they should pick you or your competitors. So on that note, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I hope this video was useful for you, and I will catch you tomorrow. Peace out. Look after yourself.